Good morning, everybody. We're going to be starting in just a minute. I know we have a global audience, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We'll just give it a minute or two for everybody to join here, and we'll get started. I see folks are streaming in, dialing in, joining us from different places. So just another 30, 40 seconds to let everybody get settled in. So again, thank you everybody who's joining in. Uh, Appreciate you taking the time to attend our webinar here. All right. I think it is a good time to get started. A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who is there across the globe. My name is Shekhar Iyer. I'm the CEO of Arango. I'm based here in San Francisco and really wanted to share some exciting things we're doing with our customers and what's happening in the industry, especially in the whole AI world, and how we can share some of the insights we have learned. I am very, very excited to have here with me Indranil Bandyopadhyay. And I did get it right, so Indranil will still talk to me, his last name. He is a principal analyst from Forrester, and really excited to have him here. And I will let you, Indranil, kind of give a quick background of yourself and all the cool, exciting work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Shekhar, for inviting me into this exciting chat. My name is Indranil. I'm based in Amsterdam, and I cover data, AI, and analytics across industries in Forrester with a global coverage. I'm here with Forrester for a little more than 3 years now. And before that, I used to be CIO of a couple of financial services company. So believe you me, I have seen this movie in my practitioner life, Shekhar. So yeah,
No,
I'm
that's great. So it's not just theory. You've actually lived the pain and walked in the shoes and removed a few shoes along your lifetime. So no, we're very excited, and that's what I would suggest. What I love about the short time we've been interacting in Renel is obviously there's research and thought leadership, but practical experience, right? And I think the title of what we are going to talk about is really relevant, the missing layer in the AI stack. We are going to talk about why data architecture matters. And while there's a lot of hype and positive energy around AI, there is an underlying dark belly. There are a lot of failed AI projects, stalled projects. The full ROI is not there. So our job is to try to unpack how can people be successful in the journey they're on. So with that, let me first of all start off by saying, what does Arango do? Arango is a contextual data layer company, and this is really targeted for enterprise AI. And we are very fortunate. We have some amazing partners like NVIDIA and HPE, Intel, AWS, Google, and we've been partners with NVIDIA for over 5 years. We built a number of things that they were working on. And you can see from Joe Eaton, who is a distinguished engineer, how he has been also helping guide some of the things we are doing in the AI space and how he values, the capabilities that we bring. We are really trusted by a number of companies around the world, whether they are Global 2000, whether they're mid-market or really innovative startup companies that are there. Very, very proud, and thanks to the team and the product and capabilities that have been built. You can see our GT reviews and peer reviews that are there, and very excited in the journey ahead. So we've had a lot of learnings. This is a highly dynamic environment we're in. AI is probably one of the most amazing innovations and impacts that are there in the last 30 years. But as with any positive or any potential comes what are the practical realities we have to deal with. And this is really where I love to kind of give it over to Indranil and kind of hear from him. What is he seeing or hearing from customers who are on their AI journey? Indranil?
Sure, Shekhar. When we are talking to our customers, as you can see from this infographic, that only 15% of the organizations got a positive bottom line impact from AI in the last 12 months. And companies are actually struggling to demonstrate the value of AI. As much as there is so much of buzz, like you just said, around AI, and the whole world is getting impacted. But when it comes to ROI, that becomes the biggest challenge when we are talking to the organization.
Mhm.
And when we speak to our customers, a few common themes, sort of conversations do come up. And if you get to the next slide, you'll get a sense of that, what they are. And as you are, looking through it, the idea is not to go through each of them, but as you are going through it, I'm sure you're finding a common theme. And that is actually data readiness. The data readiness is, or absence thereof, is the biggest challenge. As we'll see, the enterprise data isn't AI ready as we move to the next infographic, which will show us that enterprise data isn't AI ready. And a big thing around it is that a common misperception, I would say, or conception when we talk to our customers, when they talk about that their data is actually absolutely fine. They're ready, their quality is good. And yes, they're right. I mean, they can run their operations on that. But a big disconnect we find that the data is actually not ready for human consumption. They are actually, data was designed for human consumption, and that's not the case anymore. Data needs to be ready for AI consumption. For example, if you had data and you could run your reports or you run your dashboards, humans, along with their institutional knowledge, their personal knowledge, and systemic knowledge, they can sort of make sense of these static outputs which were from data. But when it comes to AI, especially agentic AI, which is expected to take actions, that institutional knowledge or personal knowledge or context, like you just said, Shekhar, is actually missing. And this is where organization needs to start thinking about data very, very differently, that how they can make data ready for AI and especially agentic AI use.
Yeah.
And given all this, I would argue, as my research into the multimodal data platform comes in, which is in the next, sort of infographic, where I see that there are three main takeaways from here.
Mhm.
And before I get into the three main takeaways, I just want to define that what we mean by multimodal data platform. I'm sure everybody has a view about it, but just for this conversation, it is around a common data platform that provides storage, processing, and access to any data, whether it's structured, unstructured, or semi-structured. It is a platform that supports multiple data models such as document, graph, relational, and key value for applications and insights. And it's important to understand that because some of these models work well with some of the context. For example, key value for caching, for example, relational for system of records, for example, graph to give context and relationship. So all of these needs to sort of come under one hood or one umbrella to give a holistic context. And I sort of talk about these three main takeaways, which is where multimodal data platform is, I would say, one of the missing links in terms of getting value out of AI. Because traditional stitched data architecture cannot work with AI. They're brittle, they're siloed. However, the real-time multimodal context is what AI needs. And this is where multimodal data platforms comes in. AI today needs workloads coming from multiple data models, and they must operate together. And more importantly, a unified and an often undervalued when we talk about a trusted business context, which is needed. So it's just not the business context, but it needs the trust and governed for that reason. So essentially, it is all about how multimodal data platform gives an organization a proper enterprise data architecture, which in my next slide I talk about that how it can create a unified, current, and trusted business context. I think essentially, Shekhar, what I'm talking about is that orgs are struggling to getting ROI for AI. And in order to do that, it's essential to get the data architecture right. At the end of the day, it is all about making decisions and taking action. And this is where the business context and the decision makings come together. And it cannot be siloed anymore. It needs to be exhaustive and available in real time whenever there's a need and wherever there's a need for it. And multimodal platforms work very well from that perspective.
So, Indranil, it seems multimodal is making a comeback because it's not that it's been around for a while,
Yes.
but in the context of AI architecture, this is even more relevant. And just on this point, at least what I have seen and what we are seeing with our customer engagements, there's really been an architectural inflection point. If you look at what Gen 1 was all about was retrieval. And this is where really the vector stores really shot to fame in being able to look at things on unstructured data, being able to get the questions answered with embedding similarity. But soon people realized that this, while it is good in some use cases, not good enough. And we moved to the Gen 2, where reasoning and even graph and relationship semantics came together. But again, while GraphRAG from just normal RAG became important and impactful, what we're seeing is really the top 5, 15% that are getting real value are applying this also to the agentic workflows and solutions. And what I mean by that and what we're seeing in the NIL and love your thoughts on that is people just don't want a Q&A or a chatbot. They want at least a machine to machine or machine human to machine automation of flows across all kinds of data. Any thoughts, comments on this and what you're seeing from the agentic world?
So absolutely, I think, if you think about that, when we started talking about initial days of generative AI, it was more around question answers. Talk to it about a translation. Give something, it translates and give you some response. Stochastic, sort of models which generate tokens from left to right, words, if you may, from left to right, not having any context and understanding. And the industry actually understood that it had limitation in terms of using generative AI for industrial use. And as we just mentioned, that decision making is the most important thing in anything, including our personal life and in organization. So how do you take something which can generate some tokens and hopefully they make sense and that doesn't have any context to action orientatedness? And that's where the reasoning comes in. That's where RAG and context and grounding them to reality, connecting them to the right knowledge becomes absolutely important, Shekhar.
Yep. No, absolutely. This is what we are seeing. And I think what is also really important, you made a very good point. Why is multimodal in vogue again? The reason is AI must reason, decide, and act across not one application, one data asset, whether it's structured, whether it's relational, to get the true meaning to get the true provenance and veracity, it has to be across structured, unstructured, multimodal data, whether it's, customer records, transactions, whether it's documents, emails, Slack messages, whether it's videos and images and audio files. And let me give an example of this. Like when you're doing customer service, some of your customer data might be in a CRM system. Some of the customer contracts you have are in PDF documents. When your customer service reps talks to a customer, they have a video file of the conversation that happened. You got to stitch together these things to have the right context to be able to have that meaningful customer interaction, next best action, pacify an irate customer. And it is not okay in this world of AI that we live in that you're not able to use all the data. And this is really what a lot of customers we find are struggling with. They get lost in the translation. The data is stale. It's not in as real time, a fresh manner, because the same data, if it's not provided in a timely manner, the whole meaning is lost for that particular interaction engagement. So this is what we're seeing, that it's not just multimodal, but multimodal, and being able to harmonize this data for a relevant action is what customers really need and are struggling with. And why what we are seeing is why the normal search-centric architectures are falling short because it's Frankenstack. If you look at this kind of diagram on the top, we have hundreds and millions of applications, solutions, chatbots, co-pilots that are being built. Obviously, some shape or form of leveraging LLM models. And then there's the whole compute. And doesn't mean every use case needs a GPU, but the right combination of GPUs and CPUs or TPUs or whatever you're using. And then obviously there's always going to be enterprise data, as we just talked about, whether in relational or new age solutions like Snowflake or Databricks and other elements. But where things are breaking down is in this red zone. There are so many different siloed systems, and the thought was maybe these vector databases could help, but we realized that had a limited effect. Then there are even some Graphly for relationships. But again, it does not bring together all the operational elements that you need, because you need the analytical operational relationships that helps you with the context. So there's always going to be a drift of context if it's not kept in sync, and there is a certain level of consistency that's there. And this is really what we're seeing. And our wonderful team came up with a great visual. It's called the Frankenstack here, Indranil. I hope you like it. And this is the problem. The problem is the missing business context. Fragmented data architectures kill the context, trust, and it really leads to poor scalability capabilities. This is important because in the AI world, the world we live in, real-time response, having that multimodal data all put together for different business scenarios, if you have to stitch together all these things, it's going to be a long, long day every day for what you're trying to solve from a business perspective. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Indranil. It's not just the time and energy, but also it's the governance and auditability. And you live in the Netherlands, obviously. So, what is the EU AI Act, and why is this important for everybody to be cognizant of?
So the new AI Act is one of the uh, primary sort of AI regulation that in this case European Union has come up, or any country has come up, and as you know, in Europe, regulation is quite important and an area of focus, and it is sort of other countries, when they look at it, they're also taking bits and pieces and getting uh, looking at AI Act and trying to sort of build their own in terms of at least where AI Act is looking towards. In no ways that it is totally exhaustive and complete. It's obviously, and as tech is improving or changing, this act also needs to be changed. However, in the context of what we are speaking here, it talks about a few things. One is around explainability and transparency of the models when they get used. It talks about traceability of data and the decisions what these AI models are going to take, or going forward AI agents are going to take. How outcomes become much more consistent. How governance and human oversights are important things. So these are sort of important elements of the AI Act. But if you start thinking about that, when you have a disparate architecture, data architecture, it fails in quite a few counts in terms of lacking provenance or missing traceability. Inconsistent outcomes may come, and very hard to govern because they are all spread. So any policy you want to put on that, whether it's a lineage or in a governance principle, or how you manage and operate, it becomes a quite complex ask. And when all of these systems come together and give an output, then you sort of don't know who has done what. So there is an absolute need for this data architecture to be unified so that there is an explainability, traceability, and consistency. And more importantly, in the context of the AI Act, how you can govern your outcome in a more meaningful way.
Yeah. No, Indranil, I think this is really important. And one of the things we are seeing, a lot of interesting and large data platforms actually use us for their lineage and governance models because it is so important to what you said. And it becomes the stakes get even higher as there are millions of agents roaming around. How do you get that trustworthiness of the answer, the context, the data, and what they can do with it? And if there isn't this lineage and governance auditability model, especially in regulated industries, this would be quite difficult to get. Now, I do like the fact that people have started asking some questions, and I'm going to throw a couple at you as we go. Indranil, based on your client calls, which industry is having the most success with AI in production?
So it's quite difficult to sort of say that, what exactly are the industries, because, depending on the S curve where an industry is or a firm is, it gets impacted. But
Mm-hmm.
definitely, financial services is an industry where I'm seeing a lot of success stories in terms of AI, obviously
Mm-hmm.
around, some of the risk modeling in insurance, predicting some of the outcomes in rating engines and that kind of stuff. In manufacturing industry, we are seeing there is, sort of stickiness in terms of AI, especially, availability of data, including I would say that digital twin, that's becoming, even physical robots are coming into play there. Healthcare is another industry where we are seeing, a lot of AI outcomes, and even telecommunication, they are not far behind in terms of using, especially IoT, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of Internet of Things and the streaming of data, real time, and dealing with them is becoming much more important. But also overall across industries, if we look at functionalities, software development lifecycle is an area where definitely we are seeing tangible benefits coming out of AI. So that's how I would like to respond, Shekhar.
No, no, great. I know, Indra, there's another question. What does context engineering mean? And we can talk about it as we talk a few more details. And Tomer asked about how does Arango DB differ from Postgres, time series, others. I'll talk a little bit about it. In fact, I think Indranil will talk about it in the multi-model context, so we'll get to that. And I will unpack this whole term contextual data layer because it sounds like a nice buzzword. The question is it just an interesting knowledge graph with some embeddings? No, it's a lot more than that, and we will definitely kind of share our thoughts around that. But you've done a lot of research on multimodal data platforms. So Indranil, tell us a little bit about that, and especially in this agentic AI world, how does that work?
So yeah, I believe that multimodal data platform, like I said, is one of the major missing link especially in agentic AI. And this is basically because of a couple of reasons. If you think about that, how agentic AI works, it's around the brains and the memory of agentic AI, that how it operates. You would tend to think that they are very much based on data, right? Now, an orchestration layer of an agentic AI, when it has to interact with different tools, for example, it needs to know what data to pass, what data to receive, how you actually combine it, pass it to another tool, which tools to choose. These are all complex applications. And if that application on top of that has also to deal with different types of or different models of data, and how they actually come together and coming in different formats, and they have to integrate it, then there's too much of load on this, which orchestrators are anyway. If you look at in agentic AI, one of the big challenges is that the orchestrators can be having a lot of challenges in terms of dealing with what they need to do. And now on top of that, they have to deal with this. But if in a data platform layer, these multi-model and multimodal data is taken care of, then it becomes much more easier for the orchestration layer to deal with that. Even from a memory perspective, whether it's a short-term memory or a long-term memory of these agents, something, a combination of a graph or a key value store can give a good understanding of the context, or sometimes, in terms of caching and responding it back, or even in a system of record sometimes needs to be part of an agent's memory. There are all sort of multi-model and multi-modalities involved. And that's where I believe that, as you can see from the on the infographic on the right, that the application layer in general, including in agentic AI, becomes much more simpler and easier to deal with if there is multi-model data platform, which can actually deal with not only context from a graph perspective, system of record from relational, vector databases, for search and all other needs, and then obviously documents as well. And if these are all taken care of, then an AI agent, at least the orchestrator, will have less things to worry about, Shekhar. I think that's what I believe
Yeah.
multimodal data platform can help with.
No. And you've written a few things about this. Tell us about that.
Yes, indeed. So what I believe that, like any tech, including multimodal or context-centric, data platform, you'll always need some initial investment of effort, right? It's not without any initial investment or effort. However, I believe that to future-proof your journey in terms of artificial intelligence, I don't think there's no other option than getting your data architecture right. Because if your data architecture is not right, and hence I was just saying that 85% of organizations are not getting any value out of AI, one of the major reasons when we speak to the client is that the data is not ready. And if the data is not ready, why it's not ready? Because the data architecture is not right. It's one of the main reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always a question of or, I say, Shekhar, but a question of and sometimes. So you don't need to get rid of certain things, okay, in order to replace this. I think that is an important thing. Like any other tech, it is not a beyond and end all of everything. There are certain things in your organizations which is working 100%. So you don't want to fix things which is broken. But in order to future proof and sort of rationalize your data architecture, which is much more aligned with AI and agentic AI, is where you need to start looking at. And that's where long-term gain is what you need to look at. Long-term value is what is the main,
Yeah.
discussion here, and how you can even reduce cost. So
Yeah.
if a piece of your database architecture is multi-model in nature, in long term, it just helps you and it will just simplify your data architecture. And for that reason, I would say that evaluate, solution providers like yours. It's not that, that you go blindly and take something. And for that reason, I don't believe in lift and shift, that you get rid of everything and then you go by what a vendor is saying and then you put it in. What you do is that you take one piece at a time, and see that, whether it's working or not. Keep your vendors honest in terms of that what promises they have made. And once you see that the value is gained, then you can slowly, bring other workloads into this data environment. I think that's the best way of dealing,
Mhm.
which not only future proofs, it reduces your total cost of ownership and also allows you to sift through um,
Mhm.
solution providers who may overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah. No, this is great. I think you just answered a question that was asked. Do you see rip and replace, upgrade, or an evolution? I think you just answered that. As much as I would love for all of our customers or prospects to replace everything, I think you should understand what the right future state is to give you that seamless agentic automation, which is where the world is going to. There are absolutely elements you need to design to get that contextual data layer, and then you can evolve it, right? There may be certain things, as Indranil, you said, that are working, that you may not need to replace it all. Some of you are just getting over fatigue from ERP implementation. You don't need to go through that. The beauty is in this world, in this Gen AI world, agentic world, I think it's really important to know that the migration and ability to transform where you are is significantly increased. And I think it's worth, as Indranil, you're saying, you have to design these things because ultimately they are business accelerators. You should not be doing any of this if you're not getting some business benefit. So, with that, let me actually launch into maybe a few customer examples. Enough of theory. Let's talk about practical stuff, right, Indranil? So
Right.
here is a very interesting cybersecurity leader, one of the foremost cybersecurity leaders that is a customer of Arango. And I want to kind of bring it to with a real kind of use case. What they're trying to provide is for support engineers to resolve cases in a reduced time frame. So what they had as a goal, their business objective was to reduce their mean time to resolve from 8 days to 6.4 days and really improve customer experience. And again, reduce costs by the cost to serve for these kind of cases that were coming. Now, their first generation, as we talked about, was a vector store with something like Quadrant. They had data in Snowflake. They even had other interesting enterprise search like Glean and other things. But this vectorally RAG approach just did not connect the relationships or give them the level of insight that was needed. What they said, let's go with the graph and the GraphRAG approach, but where it quickly evolved to is the Gen AI. How do we make this an agentic workflow where with minimal human intervention, which is a key business benefit, is deflection? How do you reduce the number of cases that you want human in the loop? How do you just verify the human can say that the complex scenarios are being well troubleshot and the way you will do it faster and in an explainable way when you have a unified, trusted context from your documents, your support docs, from your website, from your structured and unstructured data. And that is really exactly what this customer was doing. And, their quote, Arango gives our engineering support co-pilot the context it was missing. And I think there's a number of questions here. What does context mean? It is not just a knowledge graph with some embeddings. When you start bringing the data in a seamless way, you can answer faster. Because here's the thing, when people are waiting for resolutions or waiting for a response, they do want fast time to market and the response rate. If you have to go to different data sources and different things, translate those things, and trust me, I've been doing this data well for 30 years. There is a lot of mismatch in that. And if you can harmonize that data, you are going to be able to solve all these kind of agent flows that are there. So very important for you to understand that. Let me give you another example. Here, NVIDIA. Now, what NVIDIA has is a blueprint. They have a number of blueprints that customers can use. In this case, this is a video search and summarization. What this video search and summarization blueprint provides is really, again, accelerating incident detection and reduction of hours of video content. You remember when I mentioned multimodal? Multimodal, the video and audio elements also have a lot of great data, but let's be honest, who's going to review 1 day's of video clip to find that 2 minutes when an incident happened in a warehouse or a traffic or some kind of a sporting event where you wanted to catch that? And this is what this does. There is the whole computer vision, there is the whole ability to translate things, and there's the whole knowledge graph to be able to get the metadata. And this is what I mean by context. How do you put this whole thing together? And this is really why NVIDIA chose us to be one of their key partners in the GraphRAG aspect of the solution. And it is got to be scalable. You can imagine the kind of volume and data that is being generated today. And whether you're a police reinforcement person, you're looking at a theft scenario in a warehouse or an accident, there are sporting events and you're trying to get the metadata and synopsis of it. We've heard people that, just even enablement, there's so much video content that's there for enablement. How do you create just that right snippet of the right thing that's personalized for a person? Because it needs to be scalable, needs to be trusted, and it needs to be able to pinpoint to the kind of scenarios that you're looking for. So again, NVIDIA has chosen us. We are embedded in their solution. Customers around the world are also implementing in the process of implementing this. So I thought this is important, Indranil, to just kind of give an example with real life scenarios of what we are capable of doing. But love to hear from you. What are some of the use cases you are seeing or hearing from your customers?
Absolutely. Thanks, Shekhar. So I think there are five main use cases, we are hearing from our customers. To top the list is around how application can be built on a single multi-model, multimodal backend. I think you talked about that. In a way, they're related, models and modals, and the modes. But I think majority of the customers are looking at how they can simplify their data infrastructure and especially the data that how actually different types of models work in a way that in a transactionally consistent system. So yes, there are sometimes use cases of having polyglot, but I think in the context of what we are talking about, especially for certain industry where there are different types of data models and they need to come together, and especially for agentic AI where context becomes important, is where customers are looking for a single multi-model backend. Then definitely a consolidated multimodal data hub, because that helps organizations to eliminate data silos and reduce architectural complexity. That's one of the major parts. The other day I was hearing that nearly 70% of certain from our customers that they are spending time in terms of supporting their existing architecture, and only 30% they're spending for any new things, which in the world of AI and agentic AI, it should be totally other way around. 70% should be for new ways of doing business and 30% probably to keep the lights on. And this is where a unified foundational data architecture becomes so important, which is real time, and it gives insights and analytics for our customers. Then the third element is around that how you can get insights from diverse data. With generative AI, there's a renewed sort of interest in unstructured data, and research tells us that 80% deeper insights come from unstructured data. So how do you actually run real-time analytics across structured, unstructured, and even now graph, which has become so important in terms of generating context and knowledge, and vector data even, in terms of search. So how do you bring them together and get insights? The fourth is around obviously powering AI and agentic AI. We talked about it quite a bit, but how reasoning, memory, and grounding truth is becoming much more important, especially these models are generative AI models, which we know that doesn't have context, and these are stochastic models. So you need to complement that with other types of mechanism to ground them and to help them reason. And last but not the least is, especially in manufacturing, we are seeing in other industries as well, that how you can create an operational 360-degree view
Mm.
with data. And that enables live transaction-ready view of core business entities, which
Mhm.
supports real-time decisions. Because you have to somehow simulate that, right, before you put it to production. And sometimes it's easier to do different types of scenario planning from that perspective. So yeah, those are the top five use cases we are seeing. But I'll be
Mhm.
interested to know, Shekhar, how are you actually helping your customers in that regard?
Sure. Excellent. And that's perfect question. And there was a question somebody asked, where does Arango sit relative to my stack? So let me answer that. As I showed this picture, lots of people are building their copilots agents. They have legacy solutions that they are making AI powered on top of things. You have your LLMs, your compute layer, you have your enterprise data. And like I said, our contextual data platform sits on top. You will have the opportunity to migrate some of these data assets if they're not adding the full value. And over time, our recommendation is you do harmonize that. We still believe, just like there's mainframe today, there will be relational databases and other things. But what you want to do is to abstract the top layer with this contextual data foundation to give all the things Indranil has been talking about. So hopefully that answers where does Arango sit with my existing data stack. Now the question is, there were a few questions asked. Is this just a fancy knowledge graph with a few embeddings? No, it has that, but much more. We deliver a unified, current, and trusted data source so that you know what the things mean, how they relate to each other, when the temporal aspect of it, when they were true, or at what point in time was that data real, and also supremely important, where did it come from? And remember, this is like a supply chain. When you're in an IT shop, there's so many different assets, different things. They're getting combined, they're deconstructed, constructed. External information is added. So you need to have that source of where did it come from. And in certain regulated industries, supremely important that you're able to explain that. And especially if you're going to have agents do more and more of this, you want to be able to have that trust when any kind of audit or governance happens in these systems. Now, how does it all work? What is underneath it? And we'll do much more detailed technical discussion. I'm sure we will have Ravi, our CTO, CPO, talk about it. But at a very fundamental level, there are three levels to what we provide. The contextual data platform, which is the multimodal and multimodal capabilities, graphs, vectors, documents, etc. We can do it all in one, or on the pieces that you want that are relevant for you to start off with. There is the whole contextual operations. This is really important because also, as we have been dealing with all kinds of customers, some are on-prem, some are on their own private cloud, some are in an air-gapped environment, some are using our managed service. This is really important because you want to be able to deploy it in any way. And any one customer, for example, HPE is a customer that went through the whole multimodal journey for their network asset management. They have all these deployments that they feel is important. So the operational of it, because of the security and the governance, and depending on the kind of customer that either you are or the customer that you at the end deploy to, having this manageability and security is supremely important. And then on top, this is where it is so much more than just like a vector. We have vector capabilities. We have GraphRAG capabilities, hybrid, but it's really the context RAG that we will be talking more about and bringing the power of graph analytics, graph ML, and a lot of interesting things we are doing. So we will definitely do a more deeper technical discussion around this. So hopefully that answers a couple of questions that have been there coming from in the Q&A channel. And I love it. You guys are asking questions on it. Please keep them coming. And there was another question. What kind of customers are using and especially adopting the AI platform and the contextual data layer? Look, we're fortunate. We have close to 200 customers and beyond. The beauty is whether it's Global 2000, whether it's mid-market, whether it's the next hottest startup that's there, everybody is trying to figure out how to do this and also do it in a fast, scalable, reliable way. So really, customers have embraced it from across the world. If I take NVIDIA, I showed you a couple of examples, but let me take an example of NIH, so the National Institute of Health. What they came to us was during COVID. If some of you may be aware of something called PubMed. PubMed is the largest research repository in the world. It's open source, publicly available to everybody. It has research papers across all the decades and decades of research. But what they found when we were going through COVID, a lot of researchers were coming to the site trying to figure out research papers, what is being used, what is the RNA, what is the molecular, which author did what experiments. You can see the compounding effect of how much data and also the relevance of data and the time pressure to get the answers to create the kind of vaccine that we needed. So their existing systems with relational and other things failed. They needed this graph multimodal capability that could scale. And that was an example. And now they're in the process of putting the chatbots and making it even easier for researchers to be able to leverage AI to get the kind of answers they do. So that's an example of one. The other example is, let's take the example of US Air Force. One of their divisions is trying to create a data repository catalog with all kinds of multimodal data, satellite information, and other things that are there that help them piece together things. And honestly, I don't know the full use case, otherwise they would have to kill me, and I want to live. So it's amazing because in a completely regulated industry, in fact, they were the ones they told us how important the operational aspect of the data foundation is important because when you deal with such clusters of information, entities that are there, supremely important, the ease of use and deployability and security is so important. Another example is a really interesting startup called Articulate. They are leveraging our platform. They are an AI platform. They embed our solutions and they help accelerate business scenarios with manufacturing and yield management in airline industry and aeronautical industry and other things. So the beauty is it really is applicable to any customer. We have cybersecurity companies, we have retail companies, we have healthcare, life sciences companies doing clinical research. So, it is really applicable to any industry that's out there. We would love to talk to you if you have particular scenarios or use cases you want to run by us, and we're happy to share more of the insight that we have. But, this is really what it's all about. You saw the first slide that Indranil talked about how enterprise AIs does not have AI-ready data. And we believe with contextual data layer, we can really help you with a unified current trusted data so it's not just pilots, but you're ready for production. It's ready for decisions that you can stand behind when it's audited and all the governance personnel come looking at it. And it's ready for action. You may want full machine to machine, human to machine, human intervention, whatever it is, whatever part of the journey you're in, depending on this kind of use case you want to obviously design it with that. So we're really excited about what we're doing. I was really excited to see what Indranil was doing and when we got connected in some of the research he's doing. And we would love to share and continue the dialogue with all of you out there. And we're trying to leave about 10 minutes. So any questions and things you have, please keep them coming. We do have a number of assets that we will be sharing with you. There's the Forrester report. I think somebody asked, Rich had asked, where can I get my hands on this? So there is a whole landscape report that Indranil has created. we'll make sure that we share that with the people that have joined. Ravi Marwa is our CTO and CPO, and there is a blog that's coming out from him. So that goes into a little bit more technical detail, exactly how our contextual data layer works. And then I've written a couple of articles on the Forbes Tech Council, because if you cannot trust your data, your answers, and the contextual nature of the problem you're trying to solve, you're going to have a hard time convincing your leadership to continue investing in AI projects. We are also coming out with a definitive guide, AI-ready data architecture. For those of you who are in the stages, or you built a first gen or a second gen, how can we help you in your evolution to get more and more business benefit that's there? Ultimately, it's about the ROI, and I think that's what people are struggling with. And I think it's really, really, really exciting times. But it's also, you want to partner with the right people, get the right advice, whether it's from Indranils or other industry experts, or people like ourselves who have been dealing with all these customers. So what we want to do, we are this bot. We want to be your agent in your world and help you build a contextual data layer. And I think there's a lot of fragmented, lots of data. There's a lot of challenges that are out there, but there are a lot of things that we've learned, experienced, helped customers with in the journey. And we're excited to share that with you and engage with you. So I know, Indranil, I want to leave a couple of minutes for you to give your final thoughts. I'm really happy you were able to join and share. But what are your final thoughts?
Thank you, Shekhar, and thank you for the opportunity. I want to leave a few minutes for our Q&A if there's any more questions. But yeah, I mean, to sort of wrap up my closing thoughts is that I think in any environment, it becomes quite normal sometimes to work around friction and challenges, be it at a personal level or be it even at an organizational level. And I believe that most organizations, in some form or shape, try to do that so far as their AI data readiness is concerned, because they ease a change of way of looking at things. And sometimes it takes quite a bit of effort to get to that. And how about just trying to get around it and sort of, even if it's not the most effective way of doing things, they just try and do that. And that, I believe, is that talking to our customers, one of the reasons that the ROIs are not coming. And a lot of organizations are working around data silos or fragmented architecture, or even lack of multimodal or multimodal data capabilities. They do not need to do that. I think there are better ways of achieving AI data readiness. And I believe that by using multimodal data platforms, they can not only create the contextual layer of AI, including for agents, but also be nimbler and cost effective and better prepared regarding their data needs for the wider AI journey. Thank you, Shekhar.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Indranil. I know we have about 8 minutes left. I'm going to take some of the questions that are there. Evie had asked, I'd love to know more about use case showcases where Arango is used in pharma and healthcare. Happy to do that, Evie. Why don't you please reach out to us? We'll get you connected with the right experts on our side. You know, companies like NIH, we have PSI, clinical research company, and many others. So we're happy to share that with you. There's another question out here, Indranil. As enterprise architects invest in taxonomy for classification, schema, definition, etc., how does this fit with the contextual data layer that Arango is offering? I know I'll explain the Arango part, but do you have any thoughts, comments on what this question is?
I think they're very complementary. The first part of it is that what the basics you need to put in any data platform in terms of your, I think I heard schema definitions and various other sort of definitions which you need to put in place. But at the same time, when it comes to context, a few other things do come in, like ontology, like creating the semantic layer for context. So those are sort of complementary part which one needs to start thinking about for AI agents. I think that would be my short answer, Shekhar.
Yeah, no, and I think the way I would add on top of that is, ontology, schemas, and other things have been around for a long time. The important thing is how do you make it contextually aware? How do you make it as real time as possible? How are you able to also leverage all the multimodalities of data elements that are there? And it's not just a static model on which you are trying to make decisions. And we would love to hear from you, your use case or what you're trying to do, and share with you our thoughts and ideas and where we've helped. Also, I like to answer. I think, Tomer, you asked, how does Arango differ from Postgres, time series, and other data? I would love to understand a little bit more on your use case or scenario or current existing architecture. And if you would love to kind of connect with us and we will have a follow-up discussion, we can have a more meaningful conversation on that and how we can help. So let us see if we have any others. We have unfinished chat. Let's sync. So yes, we will chat. We will continue to sync. Um, any other questions from the audience out there that we've missed? Okay. Sounds good. Excellent. Well, I really would love to thank you all, and especially to Indranil for being a part of this discussion. And, we will obviously have many more things we are coming out with to help people in the various states of the journey that you're in. And again, thank you all for being a part of this webinar. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.